Yo, what is up, everybody? Teresco back again with another story from the collection titled The Shadow Dies Loudly, written by T.L. Burhu. Remember to use the links in the description below. Show love to the author, like, comment, and subscribe. Mike versus the Chaos Strain. Are you ever bored here, Mike? Like, do you ever just want more? What more could I want? Power? Steady pay? The very fact that all these lives depend on us. Their survival is our responsibility. Without us, chaos takes over. So I ask you, Daniel, what more could we even get out of life? Dude, we're mall security. What's your point? It's like talking to a fucking child, I swear to Christ. You laugh, but one of these days, there will be a reckoning. It will be biblical. What the actual fuck, dude? Do I need to be like worried? Is there a day I shouldn't come into work? Are we gonna be on the news? One day, we will be, my friend. Okay. Dan shifted his stance and scratched the back of his neck. The 18-year-old suburbanite tried to hide his feelings of discomfort, but after a bit of awkward silence, he wondered if Mike even noticed anything other than the weight of his ego. Mike was your average man, but that was in his eyes, his biggest weakness. In school, he had average grades. He used to have an average girlfriend. Till she became his average wife, average kids. But his career, it was awful. Shit pay, no respect from the very people his higher-ups told him he needed to protect. And in reality, if shit ever did hit the fan, it would be as useless as the mall shoppers, who consisted of teenagers who stole everything and old ladies who never bought anything, and he'd just be another statistic. He truly did believe he could be something more. It was this feeling deep inside of him, he couldn't explain it. It was like his programming, always striving for more, but never quite reaching it. He had this image in his head, a gold rabbit. He had this imaginary frenemy as far back as he could remember. This gold rabbit was his prize. He just needed to catch it. But it was fast and smart. He would visualize everything he did as a chase, a hunt for this creature that lived in the forests of his subconscious. When he was a boy, getting better grades was the gold rabbit. In his teenage life, the gold rabbit was between the hottest girl's legs. The best college, fastest car, the biggest house. But he just couldn't get the better, the hottest, the best, fastest, or the biggest. Mike felt his whole life was dedicated to the act of settling. He knew one day that one thing, that big break, was coming, and soon. Once he did something in life, something that would make him visualize catching the rabbit, he knew at that point, that was when he made it. He knew that was when he'd be happy. He'd have won. That's why Mike was always vigilant, on the look for that something, that special trap or rifle that he could use to catch the rabbit. There was always an opportunity. You just had to watch and wait. So, Mike stood every day on the walkway of Grand Valley Mall, waiting for his time to shine. Dan had left and returned 4 times since his and Mike's eerie conversation. The first time was just to get away. The second was to take a smoke break. The third was to go flirt with Veronica, who worked at the jewelry store. And the fourth was to tell Mike what he just saw. The words didn't come out right at first. The panting and the sweating and the stuttering made it hard to understand the boy. His ghost white face was distracting as well. Mike wasn't the sharpest knife in the drawer, but he felt something was wrong. Actually, no, maybe not. Maybe this time, it's time to catch the rabbit. Mike? I... Dan couldn't even finish his sentence. He collapsed into a puddle of tears and sweat. Dan, get a hold of yourself. What happened? He went fucking ballistic, man. Oh God, there was so much blood. Mike heard the screams and looked up. He saw Elijah, the custodian, tearing out the jugular from your typical mall walker's neck. He screeched this mix of fear and confusion and pain. Elijah threw her to the ground as she clutched the oozing wound, cried out. As Elijah stumbled toward the obese man in the mobility scooter, he was in a state of pure panic as his transportation went full speed ahead at an incredible 1 mile per hour. Typical mall walkers' cries switched from fear and pain to anger, then to rage, then to an anguish that was impossible to describe, but only because our species lost the words for it long ago, and there was more reason to fear the dark. He rose and lunged at the 3 teenagers who were recording it, latching onto one of her friends as he sprinted away, leaving her to the gnashing of teeth that was the enraged boomer. Mike witnessed the carnage as he cradled the weeping Dan. He picked him up and carried him away from the poor souls who were near the start of chaos. He saw the jewelry store, remembered their security system was the most advanced in the mall, as well as the fact that Veronica was working today, and headed there with the young man on his shoulders. Mike rushed in and carefully laid Dan behind the counter, then vaulted over and hit the emergency gate button. The thick glass doors descended from their slot, ensuring their safety. Mike took a deep breath and stood strong and collected even when the gate stopped halfway down. He still was the epitome of the masculine protector when the newly infected rushed the opening. Mike unsheathed his nightstick and prepared to give his life to ending these abominations. The first crazed mall shopper took the full power of the nightstick to the jaw, sending a shockwave of power up the temples, rattling the creature's brain. The beast fell and didn't get up. The second one received a solid kick to the gut, sending him flying into the third, bringing up the rear. The gates started to descend again, with the fourth infected crawling through the opening. Mike's made sure the back of her head met his boot, her gray matter painting the cream-colored wall next to the fresh corpse. The gates closed, cutting the body in half and silencing the room from the rest of the horror outside its walls. Mike heard crying, turning rapidly with his nightstick in hand, which made Veronica jump out in terror and scream. Her mascara was in streak from her tears, and the 22-year-old still shaking as she clutched the mic in the primal feminine energy to be protected by such a well put together man. He comforted her, as he should. Gonna be alright. Gonna be alright. How do we get out of here? Through the break room, there's a door that leads to the stairs. They go to the roof. Then we head there. No. Tiffany's in the break room. She killed Clara. I barely escaped. Well, they didn't count on me. Mike took the fire extinguisher in one hand, wielding his nightstick in the other. He kicked down the door and sprayed the contents of the extinguisher at the anticipated spot where the infected would rush forward. The two of them yelled and covered their eyes. The one on the left received the fire extinguisher to her knee, and the one on the right had a swift jab to her throat, followed by an overhand swing down onto the back of her skull. The crippled left's head was stomped on, and with that, her crazed screeching and bloodlust ended. Dan was still in shock, but useless, barely able to stand without shaking. Mike had to partially carry him up the flight of stairs that led to the roof. The trio made it, seeing the sun start to set on this doomed town. Suddenly, Veronica cried out and fell. One of the infected from the break room did not die and had both her hands on Veronica's boot as it pulled the crying woman towards the gaping maw. Veronica closed her eyes and waited for the inevitable, then felt a wet spray on her cheek. She opened her eyes, saw her now crushed coworker limp, with Mike standing tall over her. Mike picked up the petite woman. They stood in each other's arms when Mike noticed Veronica's bracelet, and he smiled. What's the significance of that? Veronica dangled the little golden rabbit charm in front of Mike. It's silly. Always had this image in my mind. I don't know. Mike embraced her. Kissing her was the most magical thing to happen to him. Dan spoke up. You know, Mike, you really are incredible. The other guys always laughed, but I mean, they were clearly jealous of you. Look at you. You saved the day, got the girl, and it just seems like you've won, man. Honestly, I wish you were my dad. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Mike. The orange sky turned a myriad of colors, and then turned to static. Then turned to black. Mike was the only one standing on the mall's roof. Then there was no roof. Just him, surrounded by nothingness. His memories flooded back into him. The neural helmet detached, the simulation pod opened, and the frail old man transitioned back to the real world. He shuffled out, gathered his things, walked to the lobby. Nice seeing you, Mike. Mike just nodded and walked out the doors. He headed home where he would sit there, alone, waiting for the day to end so he could go back to Rabbit Arcade, spend his basic income checks on pretending he something more. Since 2034, Rabbit Arcade brought him what he felt he never had. That place let him live a life where he could leave behind his bare minimum, be the savior of humanity. But he wasn't. But he would never be. He sat in his basic housing, sitting, waiting for the night to end. He picked up the yearbook from his senior year of high school, studying page after page, wondering where it all went wrong. He got to the warm page that was dog-eared, shamefully stained and crusted. Veronica Matheson's volleyball portrait. Back in the day, Mike was attractive and smart. He seemed to have things destined to work out for him. Veronica clearly felt something for him. He just never took the initiative to ask her out. He then never took the initiative in college or work. That, probably it. Never taking that one step, as small as it seemed in the past, set him up to be the man at the bare minimum. The lights started to dim. It was the government's way of telling you that they were going to be turned off for the night to save power. Then they were off. Mike sat there in the darkness and wept for his life. He had the golden rabbit a long time ago and let it go, having it only be a memory and an old picture. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the end of our story.